Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 253, Lysis 222, D to E. As we draw near to the end of the dialogue, we see finally, as if it really has taken us that long, we see that Socrates has really been flogging two dead boys all this time. They are lacking any critical acumen. They cannot think for themselves. They do not object to anything. Well, at least most of the time they don't object to anything. The only time Lysis reacted was when Socrates said something which threatened the friendship between Lysis and Menexenus. Since then, Socrates has threatened the entire idea of friendship, and Lysis has stopped reacting altogether. Is he in shock or simply behaving himself and keeping quiet? As we noted last time, it seems that the boys have stopped answering in unison. I think it was only once that they did it anyway, and it seems that it is Menexenus who is answering. He's the one who is supposedly an expert in heuristics. Obviously he isn't. He's only 12 or 13. And he obviously doesn't know the first thing about winning an argument, as one should in heuristics. Socrates himself has been using some heuristic techniques, but he too is not an heuristician. He hasn't been trying to beat the boys. He has simply been trying to confuse them, to make them drunk with the alcohol which should cure their ingestion of hemlock, where the hemlock is the education they have received from other authorities in their life, such as their parents, and in the case of Menexenus, his cousin, Ctesippus, who supposedly taught him heuristics. Ctesippus himself was a very young person when he picked up heuristics in one conversation, which we see in the dialogue Euthydemus. Both heuristics and the education given by the parents, which is to give the children technai, both of these methods of education silence criticism. This then is the point of the hemlock analogy, and alcohol supposedly releases the critical faculty and allows people to begin to search for the truth. We now reach the dregs of Socrates' remedy. He's still trying to intoxicate the boys. He's having a very hard time. But here we are, right at the end of the conversation. Tide, to agathon kaito oikeon, an tauton formen enai, alloti eho agathos to agatho monon philos, panoge. What then? The good and the proper. If we were to claim that these are the same thing, wouldn't it be the case that the good person is a friend only to the good? Absolutely. Oh well, presumably this is Menexenus. He doesn't seem to have any idea that they have just now contradicted this. They have just now said the same cannot be the friend to the same. It could be argued that Menexenus is being enthusiastic in his reply that, yes, that would be the case were we to claim that. But it sounds much more like Menexenus agreeing that the good person is a friend of the good person alone. He seems to approve of this idea despite the refutation we have already had several times throughout this conversation, that like cannot be the friend of like. Socrates can see that there is nothing more for him to do here, and he simply points out that this has already been refuted, and then he winds up the conversation. Amen kai tu toge o omitha excellenza hema sautus eu memneste memnemetha. But this too we were thinking we had refuted. Or don't you remember? We remember. A bitter lesson to be learned by every dialectician is that in a conversation where you want the interlocutor to remember something already said in the dialogue, there's no point asking if they remember, because they will say that they do remember. Socrates usually tests the memory of his interlocutor in a conversation by recalling something that was not said. And the interlocutor says, yes, I remember that we said that, and it's clearly untrue. And then Socrates knows that they have not used their brain at all. They're not thinking, they're not contrasting, comparing, or attempting in any way to find inconsistencies in the whole conversation. They are simply going along with whatever Socrates says, presumably, partly, simply in order to be polite. They don't want to be seen to be contradicting their elders. They go along with whatever their elder tells them. And it is also possible that they are simply enjoying the attention they are getting from all of the audience while Socrates talks to them. The one thing that is not going on with them is mental anguish as they struggle with new ideas and the removal of old concepts and the adoption of new concepts or anything like that. They are exactly as they were. Nothing has changed. By the way, the response is, we remember, because Socrates said, do you not remember, where you is the plural. So the one person who answered, which is probably Menexenus, said, we remember, speaking on behalf of Lysis as well as himself. We're often told that Socrates is a bully and he enjoys making the lives of his interlocutors a misery, but if this is the case, he misses a good opportunity here to say what he thinks about these lazy boys. It's as if he actually cares about their mental growth. He doesn't put them down. He only attempts to confuse them. They are not, in fact, confused because they aren't thinking. Were they to be thinking, they would realize that they themselves don't understand what friendship is. I imagine that instead of that, Menexenus in particular, who is intrigued by heuristics, regards Socrates as the one who is confusing, possibly confused, and he and Lysis can simply enjoy the performance. This has nothing to do with them. Socrates himself seems to indicate that he sees that they think he is performing for them. Ti un an eti chresai methatologo edelon hoti uden, da omai un hosper hoi sophoin tois dicasterios ta eremena hapanta anapempasasthai. What then are we to do with the logos? Isn't it clear? Nothing. I ask then, just like the sophoi in the law courts, to have all the things that have been said be brought up again. A survey of all the salient points is what is done in a court of law just before the jury goes to decide the outcome. They need all of the main points in their head when they do it, and this is what Socrates recommends doing now. Why he calls the people in the law court sophoi, I don't know. They're not sophoi, they are not experts as such. The jurors in a law court are ordinary Athenian citizens who were randomly elected for that one day. The whole case takes only one day. And even the officials in the court are elected citizens of Athens. They are there for longer than one day, but they are still not experts at what they do. The only people with some sort of expertise in the law courts are the orators, or the rhetores in Greek. They are clever at language. It is their job to persuade the judges. Is Socrates likening himself to one of these sophoi? He might be indicating that this is how he knows that the boys are regarding him as a sophos in rhetoric. The people in a court of law who do all the work are the ones giving the speeches. The judges don't really have to do much work at all. They just have to decide at the end who's guilty, who's innocent, and that's that. They don't even have to think very hard. They don't have to work on the evidence. So Socrates could be subtly criticizing them here by making himself out to be the one who's doing all the work, while they sit back passively and think that they can simply decide at the end of the argument whatever they want to decide, regardless of the evidence. But he is going through the motions by suggesting that they raise all the salient points now so that they could make an educated decision. Of course, actual truth about a concept shouldn't be left to ordinary Athenian citizens in a court of law. Truth in a concept is true whether they come to the decision or not about the concept.